Hi everyone. My name's Emmanuel Polakronis, and I'm going to show you today how to do a stack of a planet using Autostakkert, and then I'm going to show you how to process the wavelets in Registax to come up with a final image. Um, okay. So why do we stack images? Well, I'll bring up this video of Jupiter I took earlier this year in July. By the way, I've got a ZWO-224MC, and that's a good camera for planetary imaging. It costs around $419 Australian. You can get it from Bintel. That camera doesn't have a built-in infrared ultraviolet block filter built in. All the other cameras do. So with this camera, if you want to do planetary imaging, I would highly recommend that you buy an infrared / ultraviolet blocking filter. That is a must. So you must screw that on to the front lens of the camera, and then you do your fine focus after you've put the lens on, after you put the filter on, I mean. But anyway, I'm going to show you why we do stacking. So here is a video of Jupiter. I've taken this video to limit myself to 2,000 frames. And why 2,000 frames? Because the planet rotates so fast. If you take over 2 minutes of, actually over 2,000 frames of the planet, the rotational effects will come in and then ruin your image, and it may be blurred because the planet rotates like approximately once every 10 hours. So limit yourself to 2,000 frames with Jupiter. Actually, I think it's not 2,000 frames. It's actually 2 minutes of video. But why we stack is sometimes we get good pockets of seeing because of atmospheric turbulence. Sometimes we get bad pockets. So the idea is to get all the good frames and stack them and get rid of all the bad frames that are blurred from the effects of the Earth's atmosphere. So that is why we stack images, and it also increases the signal to noise ratio, and you just end up with a better image. So what a stacking program does is grabs all the good frames and stacks them and creates one final image for further processing in Registax. What else can I say about that? Well, that's about it. You can see the red spot here, but you don't see much detail, do you? And you're thinking, well, it's not going to look good, the final image, but believe me, it does. You can see one of the moons of Jupiter down here, which I will try to get into the view, but maybe not. We'll see. Okay, so let's open up Autostakkert, and I'm using version 2.3.0.21, which is probably not the latest version, but it's not going to differ much. So there's two windows. There's the processing window and there's the viewing window. It pretty much works in logical order. You open your frames, you analyze them, you then choose all your options in here on how many images that you want to keep and how many you want to throw out. And here is the imaging window where you pick your alignment points. So I'm just going to open up the video of Jupiter, which is there. So I've opened that up and have a look. I can't see it yet, but that's because I shot in 1304 by 976. And what I'll do is I'll bring up the metadata. The good thing about the ZWO camera 224MC is that it spits out a metadata file. Here it is. I'll just open that up again. In there is all your metadata, type of camera you're using, what you're shooting in, color space RAW 8. I probably should have shot in color space RAW 16. That would give me more color depth. And that is the capture area, 1304 by 976 resolution. The important things here are the gain. You try to stick around 300 for Jupiter. Every planet has a different sort of gain, but exposure, you want to limit yourself to around there. And with the white balance, in this case I chose 77 and 77 for both, because that's what looked best. It gave out the true color of the planet. But you can set it to auto in Sharp Cap. I use Sharp Cap 3.1, which is fairly easy to use. I haven't used Fire Capture, I'm afraid. That is the brightness, which sets the brightness of the background. These things I don't touch, and it spits out a date, the universal time the image was imaged, and it goes down to hundreds and fractions of a second. Anyway, that's that explanation done. Let's bring up the Autostakkert window. So you open up your video. In this case, here's mine, which I already did before. I don't know. So, and because my processing, my dimensions is quite big, I had to make some adjustments to that to bring it into view. You can reduce it down, the image processing size. You can reduce it down to say 800 by 600. So that's reduced my processing area. But then I've lost the moon down there. So in this case, the moon was too far away. So I'm going to just ignore the moon and just stick with a processing area like this. So it does have nice tooltips. So use that for planets. Surface you use for solar and lunar recordings. And also you can use it for Mercury and Venus. I've got that ticked. I've got that highlighted as well, which is pretty much was the default when you open up the software for the first time. This is for use for Venus and Mercury. For Mars, Jupiter and Saturn, I use Planet. As for Uranus and Neptune, I'm still learning about that, and I'm having trouble getting color out of them, so not sure which way to go with those two planets, but it's probably using the Planet option. Local AP is what that is just a little alignment point, not a global, which would be a big square around the planet itself. Now I just go analyze, and what it's going to do is going to work out the best frames and the worst frames and create a graph. I'll explain the graph, what it means. I had it written down somewhere, and now I've lost it. Never mind. It's just going through now. I'll just pause it for now, just to save a bit of time. Okay, welcome back. It's done its analyzes, and I have this ticked as well as default. It tells you what that option means in the tooltips. I don't touch these, and this middle frame here is like a process it carries out while it's stacking. I'll come to that later on. But important, here's the graph. Now this graph is a plot of the best frames and the worst. Now the y-axis is the quality of the images. the x-axis is the number of frames. So just have that in mind. So that green line is a line of best fit. As you can see here, up here, I move the slider right down there. That is the worst frame, and the best frame is the first one. So I always have it set to the first one as a reference frame. So what I usually do is I concentrate around this area just before it hits the horizontal axis. I use that as a guide as to what I want to keep, what I want to throw away. To the right of this line, I'm not interested in those. I don't want to use them. I just want to use all the data from the far left to this point here, which is you press Control and left click on your mouse, and that tells you what value that is. That's 46% of the frames. So 46% of the frames have a quality ranging from around 80% all the way down to about 55%. So you can click, say, I want 15%, which is what I usually use, which is roughly at about this point. And then I go to 25. I can even go to, well, find out a point. And then to find a point, you press the Control key and the left mouse button simultaneously. So there's my limit, 45. So I wouldn't go any further. So 15% and 25, that's it. For the purpose of this exercise, I would probably even go to 40% or even 45. But for the purpose of this exercise, I don't want to waste time, and I'm just going to do 15 and 25. Now, up here is the output file, and I've told it to output a TIFF. But you can also choose those options. You don't have to tell it percentage. You can tell it a number of frames, but I go by percentage. Down the bottom left-hand side here is how many frames you have. That is over a 2-minute period. 3,883. I usually have this clicked at 75%. I think that was the default value. This option here, if you click it, it will do some sharpening of the wavelets for you when it outputs the file. But I don't tick that. I just leave that be, and I do all my sharpening in Registax. I'm telling it to save it in folders of 15% folder and a 25% folder. That'll come into play later on. You can also put a prefix next to the folder and call it Jupiter red spot, or something like that. I have the drizzle off, and it's telling me that's recommended. Now these other ones is undersampled images. You use 1.5, and there's a good little tutorial publication from the website. I recommend you print that out. It gives you an overview of the software and how it works. So I have that to off, and we come over here. I go back and pick my best frame as the reference one, and then I've got alignment point box sizes. Now I can choose them manually and click there and make my own alignment boxes, but I'm going to clear that. You can also manually put in alignment points yourself. That's a 25 box size. Clear that. But I go for place APs in grid. Minimum brightness, I don't know. I've just got it set to 35. I don't really know. I just probably went by the default and left it at that. I didn't want to play with that, so I'll probably go to a 30 alignment point size box, and you place alignment points in grid automatically. There you go. I use that a lot, and I get consistent results. Okay, so but before we're going to go ahead and do that, I want to show you something that's important. This is called the color. Now, with my sharp cap, I have to use these options. You can choose auto detect, but it looks black and white. Have a look at that. That doesn't work. Grayscale, obviously I'm not going to use that, but you can create an image that's in grayscale. RGB, no, that doesn't work. It threw that out. So I've got to choose the right Bayer pattern combination that has got the most realistic color for Jupiter. I could use that one, or I could choose that one, and I probably wouldn't use that one. So it's either between these two. Now, I think that looks a bit too blue. I'm going for this one. That looks more natural. And I just know from experience by observing Jupiter that this is the closest color. Now, later on in Registax, I will adjust the color balance, but that is the closest I get. So don't forget to do this. If you use sharp cap, you've got to do this. So there we go. So I'll just place APs in grid, and then I go stack. And then it's going through the process of stacking through all these processes. That's the first one, and then we'll do that. And it tells you where it's at. And then when it does everything, it tells you it's all done. So I'm going to stop the video for now because I want to save a bit of time and a bit of space. Welcome back, and you can see how it's gone through all the processes. And it's kind of like in the middle now, so I'm just sort of want to show you that. And I'll pause the video again. And okay, welcome back. Welcome back, and it has done the processing. It's gone through all those, and when it finishes, it tells you down the bottom that it's done. So I forgot to mention about Saturn. If you are imaging Saturn, limit yourself to 3,000 frames. That planet also has a fast rotation. However, because it's further away, you can go longer than 2,000. That is relevant for Jupiter. Now, after it's finished stacking, I just minimize that, or you can close it down. I open up Registax, but before I open up Registax, I will show you where there's the files. There's my original video. There is the 15 percentile and the 25 percentile. 25% of the best frames are in there. 15% of the best frames are in there and stacked. So I'll just open these up, and there's a stack of the best 15% images there, and here's a 25%, best 25%. So that's what I usually do. I usually at least do about 3 percentiles, 15%, 25, 45%, maybe even 75%. It depends on the seeing at the time and that shape of the graph. If the graph has a better shape, by all means, you then, and the seeing at the time was good, by all means, use more percentiles. And then I process each percentile, and after the wavelets in Registax, I then do a process of elimination to see which one to use as the best one. So that's how I do it. Okay, so we've got our output files, we know where they are. Now we open up Registax. And I'm using version 6. It comes up like this. This is the interface. And all you do is you select these stacked files. And they are where I showed you before. Not in there, in here. There's the 15%, 25. So I'll just choose the 15 for the sake of this presentation, I'm not going to do the 25 and repeat itself because I'll just be wasting time and it's repetitive. I always press yes when this comes up. So here is this stacked image of Jupiter. It looks a bit blurry, doesn't it? But you go over to here, and I use linear and I use Gaussian. They're the ones that I use, and I always get good results. I only adjust this layer, and I go all the way to the right. Look at that. That looks pretty good and sharpened. However, there is a lot of noise there. Can you see how it's a bit grainy in appearance? That's the noise. So what you do is you go over to these two and you adjust these. Now, to denoise the image, you go up in percentile. You go up into 0.05. That goes increments of 0.05. I'm going to denoise a bit more. And keep an eye on your image and you'll watch the noise disappear, or the graininess, it will disappear. So I'll probably go at 0.25 and I'll leave it there. And then, and this one here, okay, before I go over there, that is to not denoise as much, okay? You can adjust it. So I'm going to go to 0.25. Now that 0.25 is pretty common with most of the planets that I've imaged, Jupiter, Saturn and Mars. Around about 0.25 and 0.3. It just depends on the seeing at the time. I'm going to stick to 0.3 for now, and then this is to sharpen it more. So it goes in increments of 0.01. That is to sharpen it, and the downward arrow is to de-sharpen it. So I usually go to about 0.15, which is half of the denoise. And you can start to see the detail coming up, and I actually might even go a bit more. Now, the more you sharpen, the more detail you see. But if you over sharpen, you'll overcook it, and you won't get a good result. You'll get too much noise. Yeah, I'm a bit happy with that. I'll leave that for now. I can see some good detail in the cloud tops there, and some festoons, and the great red spot is coming out nicely as well. So I'm just going to leave it at that. So once that's done, I go to do all. Bang. It's done it. I've supplied those wavelets. Now the next step is to go over here. I don't usually adjust the contrast and brightness. I do that later on in a photo imaging software like Photoshop or GIMP. I don't use GIMP, by the way. So what I do is I go to the color balance over here and see how they're not all aligned. I usually click auto balance, and there probably is a bit too much blue there, so you can adjust it at there. And you can reset it. I pressed auto balance, didn't I? So there you go. I'm happy with that. That looks more natural. And you shut that down, and you save the image. You save the image as a TIFF 16-bit. Now, being the 15th percentile, how many images did we have? 3,881, didn't we? So 15% of that is 0.15 times 3881. 582. So it's actually 582.15. I'm going to call it 582 ST. So then I know that is there's 582 images that have been stacked. And I'm just going to save. Then I close that down. I close Autostakkert as well. Now I'll show you the difference between a unprocessed and a processed image. Let's go to 15. Let's bring these two up in preview. Taking us time. Come on. Windows. Preview. There is the unprocessed image that hasn't had the wavelets processed. And there is the wavelets processed there. And that looks pretty nice. I can see a lot of detail there. Now, it's important to grab this image and bring it into a photo processing software and crop the image around the edges, because sometimes you do see the edges of all the individual frames come up. You don't want that. It's not going to look nice. I know it doesn't come up here. However, I always crop just, you know, from there all the way to about there. So like a little box. That way I get rid of those edges that are all stacked on top of each other. In Photoshop or GIMP, you can process the brightness and the contrast. You can also do some other processing if you wish. Yeah, so that's it pretty much. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. Just gonna think about oh yeah, one more thing to say is that when you have that original file video, it takes up a lot of room. What you do is you compress them with a zip program. I found that using the original zip on my Windows 10 machine, you lose a bit of data. So a nice lossless zipping software to use is called 7-Zip. I would highly recommend 7-Zip for compressing your videos because it's lossless. You don't lose data. If you do lose data, you may lose important information like color. Anyway, thank you for your patience and thank you very much.